The cold wind swept across the meadow, but Lily felt nothing. Thin dust particles floated in the still air, as if the universe was slipping into a long, hopeless slumber. The sky was overcast, as though the final light of the world had faded, leaving behind an empty, despairing space. The feeling of isolation enveloped the small house on the hill, the place she had found as a home, but also the place that concealed dreams long dead and hopes now only remnants of the past. In the silence, there was nothing but the whispering wind, a reminder of things gone by, of things that could never be undone. The heavy atmosphere seemed ready to spill out from the very walls of the house, where every corner was soaked with painful memories. Each day, Lily woke up to see old pictures and worn-out items that had been with her for years, as reminders of her choice, that she had given up the world out there to come here, to a place where everything seemed to slowly spiral in a vortex of despair. And she still couldn't escape from it. Lily stood in the stillness of the house, her hands gripping the phone tightly, as though it was the only thread connecting her to the outside world. Her eyes wandered absent-mindedly out the window, where vast fields were slowly sinking into the darkness of dusk. The distant hills flickered in the thin mist, like gloomy spirits drifting in an endless void. In these moments, her heart began to race, as if it were receiving a signal she could not ignore, a sign from somewhere far away that she didn't know how to face. Lily was a middle-aged woman, her hair faded with time, but her eyes remained sharp and keen. She had given up the hustle and bustle of city life to build a sanctuary, a place to protect and care for wild animals, especially Mustang horses, the symbol of freedom and resilience. But deep within her heart, there always lingered an unspoken pain. The years spent here had witnessed heartbreaking scenes that could never fade from her memory. Each time she saw a creature abandoned, each time she failed to save one, it left a new scar on her soul. Though outwardly strong and resilient, Lily was not cold or rigid. She had a kind heart, always listening and understanding the pain that creatures endured. But it was her inner softness, the feeling of helplessness whenever she couldn't save a life, that had created an invisible fear, a conflict in her heart she could not resolve. Every time she faced the decision to save a life, her heart felt like it would shatter, because she could never forget the failures of the past that she could not change. In those moments, fear and resilience would tear at her, as though she were standing on the edge of a cliff, one step away from falling. Lily's small house stood peacefully on top of a hill, surrounded by vast fields, quiet streams flowing through, and distant hills veiled in a thin mist of the evening. This was wild land, untouched by human hands, where wild horses could live freely. Her sanctuary was not just a shelter for animals, but also a place where the beauty of nature and freedom blended together, creating a peaceful world where there was no cruelty and no fear. But behind this peaceful beauty was a sense of darkness, as though this place was merely a fragile shell hiding a deeper truth, that freedom and hope might only be fleeting, fragile illusions, easily shattered. The Mustang horses, those free creatures, unbound by chains or the control of humans, had been saved here, healed, and found their freedom in every step they took. But did that freedom truly exist? Suddenly, the sound of the phone ringing cut through the stillness of the space. The ring echoed through her, a sharp reminder of something she could not avoid. Lily looked at the phone screen, her heart tightening. This was not just an ordinary emergency call. She knew, in that moment, everything she had prepared for her entire life would be tested. She realized she could not just stand by. The voice on the other end of the line came through, filled with worry and urgency, like a cry for help from far away. Lily, a pregnant Mustang is being sold to the slaughterhouse. It only has a few hours left to live. You're the only one who can save it. Please, save it. Lily felt a shiver run down her spine, a paralyzing sensation washed over her, as though she had been struck by a lightning bolt, making it hard to breathe. She couldn't just stand by, but every part of her screamed a vague fear. If I fail again this time, another life will be lost forever. This feeling, this haunting dread, was as if she were standing between light and darkness, with no way out. Lily took a deep breath, her hand gripping the phone as though making a promise. And all she could feel was a strong plea for help, a life waiting for her to save it. There was no time to hesitate. She had to act. This was a fight to save a life, and she would not give up. Even knowing that every step she took might be her last in this journey to save freedom, to save life. And as soon as Lily stepped out the door, she knew that a decision had been made, a decision that would change everything she had ever believed in. Lily took a deep breath, feeling the cold air outside the house. Her eyes were heavy as she gazed into the distance, where the slaughterhouse awaited her. She couldn't stop, she couldn't turn back. This was not a decision made lightly, it was a profound commitment, a promise that Lily had sworn to herself she would never break. Her heart was restless, waves of emotion rising within her. Every step she took on the path leading to the slaughterhouse felt heavy, as if each footfall was a resignation she couldn't avoid. The cold didn't just come from the surrounding space but from the anxiety wrapping around her heart. As she neared the slaughterhouse area, the scenery seemed to freeze in the darkness of death. The place was eerily silent, the iron gates shut tight, with dim lights flickering, no one in sight, only the long breaths of creatures chained up, horses unable to move, waiting for a death unknown to anyone. A suffocating atmosphere hung in the air, where all hope seemed to have been lost. Lily stood outside, taking a deep breath to calm herself, but her heart still raced, the feeling as if time had contracted, every second passing was another opportunity lost. The slaughterhouse owner stepped forward, his cold eyes scanning Lily and Sable. "This horse is named Sable," he said, his tone dripping with disdain. "You can see for yourself, it doesn't have much hope left. It definitely won't survive much longer if this continues." He laughed callously, then turned and walked away, leaving Lily with the horse standing motionless in despair. Lily said nothing, only watching the man's retreating back, her heart filled with emotion. Every word from the slaughterhouse owner felt like a slap to her heart, as if he wanted nothing more than to make her falter. But Lily could not let that happen. She turned back to look at Sable, the horse's eyes staring at her, filled with skepticism but also with a hint of hope. Lily knew that if she didn't act now, no one would save Sable. Sable stood there, in a makeshift stall, her deep black eyes looking at Lily with a mix of doubt and expectation. This horse, once sleek with a shiny coat, was now ragged and dirty, covered in mud and dust. The wounds on her body were not just signs of physical battles but marks of exhaustion, of pain that could not be expressed in words. These wounds were not only visible on her body but had also embedded themselves deep into her soul, like an irreversible sentence. However, what held Lily's gaze was the swelling belly, one that carried within it a new life, a being growing in the harshness of life. Though tired, in pain, and almost completely spent, Sable still stood there, motionless, her large eyes filled with signs of life and a desire to be saved. Sable was a symbol of freedom but also of pain that words could not capture. Though abandoned and almost erased from this world, she still stood firm, still resilient, surviving. Lily could not take her eyes off Sable. The pain inside her spread like wildfire. This was not just a horse that needed saving, it was a soul, full of resilience, waiting for redemption. Each wound, each sign of suffering on this horse's body was like a call for awakening in Lily's heart. She understood that nothing could undo the pain Sable had endured, but if she could, she would help Sable live again, so that this horse could reclaim her freedom and belief in life once more. Around her, people were beginning to sell and auction off the horses, but Lily's gaze remained fixed solely on Sable. She moved closer to the auction area, her heart swelling with anxiety. The slaughterhouse owner stood to the side, eyeing her suspiciously. Meanwhile, Sable stood still, her sad eyes gazing at Lily as if searching for a miracle. The auction began, the horn sounded, and horses were presented before the crowd. Each auction was becoming more intense, but Lily's mind was only focused on one horse, Sable. She had no other choice. Lily knew that if she didn't win this auction, the horse would never have a chance to live. Determination flared within her. Lily raised her hand, bidding strongly, not letting anyone have a chance to snatch Sable away. $5,000. Lily's bid rang out, breaking the tense silence around her. A few people around her glanced at her in surprise, but no one dared to bid higher. Finally, the horn sounded, and the auction ended. Lily won, but this victory did not bring her joy. She only felt as if she had just fought a battle she couldn't afford to lose. As Lily approached, her steps were slow and deliberate. She gently placed her hand on her arm, feeling a tremor inside her, but she didn't let it show. She silently told herself to stay calm, to make Sable feel the safety coming from her. Everything around them was quiet, not a sound, just the breathing of the horse and the sound of Lily's footsteps. Lily approached the horse, not showing any fear or worry. She softly said, "Don't be afraid, I'm here to help you." Her words, though soft, were filled with resolve. Lily understood that Sable needed not just a savior, but patience and trust. Every movement Lily made was gentle, taking each step slowly to avoid frightening Sable. The sensation of the halter as she carefully placed it around Sable's neck was an unforgettable moment. Each movement was slow but sure. There was no resistance, only the trust Sable gradually placed in Lily. As the halter was secured, a profound silence fell over the auction area. No more noise, no more doubt in Sable's eyes. The horse stood still, as if she had been waiting for this moment for so long. Lily gently took the lead rope, then used her other hand to caress Sable's neck. "We're leaving here," Lily whispered. "We'll find a safe place for you." Slowly, Lily led Sable out of the slaughterhouse, each step firm, as if embarking on a journey of salvation, not only for the horse but for her own soul. Though Sable was still weak and exhausted, her steps seemed stronger, each one as if stepping out of the darkness into the light of a new hope. The horse no longer had to face death in the shadows, and now she would have the chance to live freely, to live as a being worthy of love and protection. Lily looked at the horse walking beside her, her heart filled with hope. They were not just stepping out of the slaughterhouse, they were stepping into a new life, a life without fear, without pain. As Lily gently pushed open the door of the transport vehicle, she could feel the tension in the air. But strangely, Sable showed no signs of panic. The horse, despite having endured so much pain and fear throughout her short life, stood calmly, her large eyes gazing out the window, watching the scenery pass by with a look of anxiety, yet also a sense of hopeful anticipation. Lily sighed and looked out the vehicle window, but in her mind, there was only one thought: she was doing the right thing. This journey wasn't just a physical one, it was a journey of salvation. Every mile that passed, every stretch of road, was a profound change for both her and Sable. In stark contrast to the journey Sable had taken before, where she was led to death in the silence of the slaughterhouse, now there was a road leading to hope. No longer were there the heavy breaths of horses chained up, no longer the ominous air of despair. Now, this horse was on her way to a different place, where she would find safety and love. Every road the vehicle traveled felt like a new page in a book, where this horse would find the freedom she had lost. Both Lily and Sable shared a unique connection, a profound understanding. Lily knew this was a crucial moment in Sable's journey of salvation, and though neither of them spoke, they both felt this bond. Sable didn't look back at Lily, but her hopeful eyes, looking out the window, seemed to promise that she was ready to trust what lay ahead. The vehicle stopped at the gate of the sanctuary. To Lily, this wasn't just a gate to the sanctuary, it was an escape from all the worries and fears that she and Sable had endured. Everything here was different from the world outside. The gate opened, and the bright afternoon light poured down onto the vast, open land, creating a space full of peace. The green hills, the cool trees, and the soft breeze rustling through the branches created a sound like a natural song. There was no intrusion, no fear. This was a land of freedom and tranquility. Sable cautiously stepped out of the vehicle, her legs unsteady, but she didn't show any signs of panic. Each step of the horse was like an affirmation of change, a new life about to begin. Lily watched the horse, noticing the difference in how Sable moved. No longer was she a frightened horse, shrinking under the oppression of death, but now she was a horse walking gently, searching for a place of refuge. Lily led Sable into the spacious stall, where she would be cared for and given the freedom to move. Sable stopped, raising her head to look around, her eyes still filled with doubt. She didn't enter right away but stood there, as if checking everything around her. This horse still couldn't fully trust that she was safe here. It was an unmistakable feeling, the hesitation that all injured creatures face when stepping into an entirely unfamiliar place. She still remembered the days of abandonment and the times she had been deceived, and now Sable needed time to understand that this sanctuary was truly safe. Lily looked at the horse, then turned to her colleagues, who were ready to help Sable. Everything would take time. The worry and tension in the air needed to be replaced with care and love. Sable needed time to adjust to this place, to feel that this was her place of salvation, a place where she wouldn't have to fear or worry anymore. Sable entered the stall, where there was enough space for her to move freely. No more cramped cages, no more chains, only open space where she could walk, run, or jump if she wanted. But even so, Sable stood still, as if she still couldn't fully trust the safety of this place. She turned slightly, her eyes still filled with anxiety. A part of her couldn't quite believe that she was truly saved, that this was a place where she could live peacefully without threat. Lily and her colleagues began to care for Sable meticulously. They brought her food and water, but didn't force her. Every action was filled with patience, as a reminder that love cannot be rushed, but must be built over time. Sable only ate a little, her eyes never leaving the people around her, but with each passing moment, she moved closer, slowly beginning to feel the care and affection in Lily's eyes. Lily sat down near Sable, observing the horse, sensing every small movement she made. Just a slight shift, a gentle flicker of the tail, and Lily could feel the growing bond between them. This was a long journey, not just to save a living being, but to prove that there was still kindness, love, and hope in this world. This feeling wasn't just joy, it was a miracle that Lily couldn't stop believing in. Not long after Sable entered the stall, she began to seem more at ease, gradually finding a spot to lie down in the spacious stall. Although she still felt some anxiety, there was a palpable change in her demeanor. She no longer seemed threatened by life, and Lily's heart began to settle, feeling a sense of peace as she watched the horse gradually relax. They had already crossed the longest distance, but their journey was far from over. This was just the beginning, where both of them would start to find peace, where Lily knew that she hadn't just saved a horse, but also saved her own soul from despair. And as the moonlight illuminated the dark night, a miracle occurred, changing everything forever. As night fell, enveloping the space in an eerie silence, the soft moonlight illuminated everything around. Lily could feel the change in the air. This night felt different, the stillness seemed to be waiting for something magical to happen. And then, in that quiet space, a clear sign appeared. Sable began to go into labor. A wave of anxiety surged within Lily, but she wasn't afraid. Part of her knew that Sable had endured so much pain throughout her life, but this time, she would be the one to guide this horse into a new future, one filled with life and protection. Lily sat beside Sable, simply watching her, but inside, there was a deep trust in the power of motherhood. She knew that Sable was no ordinary wild horse. She was a warrior, full of resilience, a mother who would fight with every ounce of strength to protect the child she carried. The faint moonlight shone down on Sable, creating a mystical and serene atmosphere. The world seemed to pause, as if waiting for the miracle that life would bring. Lily sighed softly, looking at Sable, and with just one glance into the horse's worried eyes, Lily felt the strength, the readiness for birth. A shudder ran through Sable's body. Her legs wobbled, but she stood firm, determined. Every painful contraction made her lower her body, then rise again, as if each pain was a battle to protect the life of the foal inside her. This scene was not just childbirth, it was a battle, a natural miracle, a testament to the indescribable strength of motherhood. Lily sat silently beside her, her eyes fixed on Sable, watching each step carefully. Despite her own anxiety, she trusted in the power and instincts of this mother horse. She knew no one could replace a mother's love, and the miracle unfolding before her would create a permanent change in Sable's life. The contractions came and went, each pain a sign of birth, a sign of rebirth. Then, as the moonlight grew brighter, a small foal, with a shimmering silver coat, began to emerge under the protection of its mother. The foal, just like its mother, with a brilliant silver coat, was a clear sign of new life. Lily could barely hold back her emotions, her eyes filled with tears as she looked at Sable's first foal, the perfect little horse she had always dreamed of. She named the foal Nova, because Nova brought new light and hope, like a tiny beam of light in the dark, bringing hope to everyone. As Sable looked down at her foal, her eyes filled with happiness and protection. Despite her exhaustion, Sable never left her foal, protecting Nova with all the strength of a mother. She sniffed her tiny body, gently caressing it, as if this was the last moment in her life where she had to protect, nurture, and shield her child. This was not just a birth, it was a spiritual and emotional healing between mother and child. It was a sacred bond, one that could only be formed by a mother's love, capable of creating such a miracle. Lily saw the transformation in Sable's eyes. The once wounded mare was no longer just a horse, but a mother filled with strength and resilience. Sable had embraced her instincts and understood that her love for Nova was eternal, an unbreakable bond that nothing could destroy. Lily realized that the love between them was not just about salvation, it was about rebirth, life continuing, not through material nourishment, but through trust and affection. This was a miracle that both Sable and her foal shared, a new journey beginning not just in the body, but in the soul. Lily understood that this journey between her and Sable wasn't just about survival, but about spiritual connection, love, and hope. Lily looked at Nova, then at Sable, feeling the peace and hope in their eyes. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but at least now, they had each other, and everything they needed to begin again. She smiled softly, her heart filled with happiness as she witnessed the miracle of motherhood. As the sun slowly rose, shining over the green fields, Sable and Nova stood side by side in the spacious stall, where they could move freely. This was no longer a place of pain or fear. It was a place of life, love, and protection, where new life was born in love and hope. A sense of peace flooded Lily. She sat beside Sable and Nova, watching Nova's first steps, those light yet confident steps. She felt a strong belief in life, in motherhood, and in everything that she and Sable had been through. These two horses had found each other, and now, together, they would continue walking in a new life. But even as the dawn began to break the night, not everything was bright. Just as hope was beginning to bloom, a social storm started to gather, threatening to shake everything Lily had built. Lily sat quietly in the living room of the sanctuary, gazing out the window, where Sable and Nova were relaxing in the warm sunlight. But in her heart, a storm was relentlessly roaring. Uninvited phone calls, annoying messages from people who didn't understand, and critical articles on social media, all seemed like an unceasing attack on the decision she had made. A wild horse, and you spent a fortune to save it? The mocking voice of a horse trainer echoed in a phone conversation. We have thousands of horses that need training, but you chose to save a costly wild horse. Don't you see you're wasting resources? That question lingered in Lily's mind like a deep cut. There were times when she wondered if she was doing the right thing. The horse trainers and animal welfare organizations criticized her for choosing to save a wild horse instead of focusing on more promising horses that were already trained or could easily be sold on the market. They believed she was wasting her effort and finances on a horse they considered worthless. This wild horse, if left there, we could focus on saving other horses, ones with real value, another animal welfare organization commented, leaving Lily stunned. Why waste resources on a creature that can't integrate into human society? Each criticism was like a knife to her heart. The misunderstanding and judgment from the people she had once trusted made her feel as though she was facing a society that had no room for choices driven by compassion. They didn't understand that her actions weren't a waste, but a declaration of love, a vision of a world where animals aren't just resources to be exploited, but beings that have the right to live, to be loved, and to be protected. Lily stood at the door of the stall, looking at Sable and Nova, her heart filled with unwavering conviction. She couldn't let the criticisms change her decision. Both Sable and Nova were her family, and she would protect this family with everything she had. This isn't about wasting. This is about life, Lily told herself. She knew the critics couldn't understand the special bond she had with the two horses. They didn't understand that in her heart, Sable wasn't just a wild horse, but a loyal friend, and Nova wasn't just a newborn, but a promise of a hopeful future. Even though the criticisms still echoed, Lily couldn't let them affect her belief. Every day, when she saw Nova running around the stall, when she saw Sable caring for her foal, she knew she had made the right choice. This wasn't about money or fame. It was about love and loyalty, about belief in pure relationships between humans and animals. Lily stood firm, her eyes staring directly at the critics, even though they couldn't see her. She would protect her family, because this family wasn't just the beings she had saved, but friends, creatures she loved, and she would never abandon them. Lily turned back to look at the stall, where Sable was gently tending to Nova, the horse's eyes filled with determination. She knew that no matter how society may criticize her, no matter how many ongoing challenges she faced, her belief in her family and the love she had for Sable and Nova would be the driving force to get her through it all. Love doesn't need to be understood, it only needs to be lived and protected. Lily realized this battle wasn't just the struggle of a wild horse and a woman. It was the battle of love, of trust, and hope for a world where beings are loved for who they are, not for their material worth or value. However, life was never as easy as Lily thought. Just as she felt she had overcome the biggest challenges, another harsh trial suddenly came upon her, forcing her to face a situation she had never imagined. The sky suddenly darkened, with swirling black clouds rushing in, making the earth seem to tremble. The floodstorm came without warning, but it arrived swiftly and devastatingly, like a warning from nature that its power would never be underestimated. Lily looked outside, and everything around her seemed to blur. The rain began to pour down in torrents, accompanied by the strong currents of water from the streams along the sanctuary, rushing down like waterfalls. She immediately ran outside, but everything happened too fast, too powerfully, and nothing could have prepared her for what was coming. In the pouring rain, Lily saw Sable, the resilient mare, rush into the flood, her body leaning toward Nova, the foal, who was struggling to hold steady. That scene, like a miracle of nature, demonstrated the incredible power of motherhood. Sable, despite her body being swept away by the torrent, still stood firm, protecting her foal with all her remaining strength. She hesitated not once, never looking back, as if the mare had accepted that she would sacrifice everything for Nova, for the life of her child. Lily ran towards them, her heart filled with worry and fear. She felt the helplessness in every step she took, but she could not give up. The raging waters surrounded her, but she couldn't let Sable and Nova suffer alone. Lily ran forward, using all her strength to push the heavy waters out of the way of the two horses. The feeling was as though she was trying to fight against a great force of nature, but her heart was filled with trust. Lily plunged into the wall of water, breaking through it as if she were a part of life itself, never wanting to leave anyone behind. This scene, a woman and a mare protecting her foal in the wrath of nature, was a testament to the power of motherhood and the indescribable strength of resilience. Lily reached out, struggling to pull Nova from the powerful current, and with one final effort, she managed to get both mother and foal to safety. The storm passed, leaving a peaceful space bathed in the soft light of the sun. Although the surrounding scene was still filled with water and chaos, in that moment, Lily stood there, beside Sable and Nova. In the fading light of the day, the two horses stood strong, like a symbol of life and hope. Lily looked at the two horses, and in the twilight, she realized that she hadn't just saved a horse, she had saved a part of life and hope. She had done something that very few people could, not only saving a being but also creating an unbreakable bond. Lily lifted her gaze to the sky, her eyes shining with a strange sense of peace. The storm had passed, and in her heart, a deep sense of gratitude spread. She knew that the bond between her and Sable was not just about rescuing, but about unconditional love, a love nurtured through challenges, and now that love had become a part of life. Every step that lay ahead for her and this small family was not just a continuation of a journey that had begun but a testimony to the power of faith, hope, and love. With Nova, Sable, and Lily, they had not only overcome challenges but learned that even when everything might break, love is something that will never fade. With the emotional imagery of a mother protecting her child, a woman protecting her family, Part 6 of the story ends with trust and hope, opening a new chapter in the journey of Lily and her horse family. Love does not need to be explained, it only needs to be lived and protected. As the storm clouds faded and the sun began to set, a new chapter was about to unfold, one that would challenge everything Lily thought she knew about love, sacrifice, and the true meaning of family. This story, the story of Sable and Nova, is not just a miracle of life, it is also a symbol of resurrection. It is a testament to the power of love to heal every wound, every scar, whether on the body or the soul. Sable's journey from a wild, abandoned mare to a mother with boundless strength, and Nova's arrival into the world as a beacon of hope, is a reminder that no matter how broken a creature may seem, love still has the power to bring healing and new beginnings. Lily watched as Sable and Nova ran across the open fields of the sanctuary, their figures framed by the golden light of the setting sun. It was a picture of peace, of harmony, a scene that could only come from a place of deep healing. The storm, the challenges, the fears, had all passed, but what remained was a family, bound not just by the circumstances of their rescue but by the profound love that had formed between them. Every step they took together was a step of rebirth, a testimony to the fact that even in the darkest moments, love can find a way. This was not just the revival of a wild horse or a foal, it was the revival of hope itself. The love Lily gave to Sable and Nova had given them the chance to trust again, to trust in a world where they were not just survivors but worthy of love, care, and a future. Sable, a creature once broken, was now a proud and protective mother, no longer defined by her past but by the life she was nurturing and the future she was building. Nova, innocent and full of promise, now embodied the new beginnings that had sprouted from the soil of pain and struggle. Their lives, once marked by abandonment and neglect, now thrived with the beauty of connection and trust. In that moment, Lily realized something profound. The love she had for them was not just an act of charity, it was an exchange, a two-way street where both she and the horses had been healed and transformed. But the story was not over yet. The world outside the sanctuary still held challenges. There would always be others questioning Lily's choices, others who would never understand the bond between a woman and two wild horses. The storms of life would continue to come, and just as Sable had fought through the storm to protect her foal, Lily would need to continue fighting to protect her family. Would the love they had built continue to grow? Would Sable and Nova face new challenges together? What awaited them on the horizon? Only time would tell. This story is not just about Lily's deep connection with a pregnant Mustang horse. It's about rediscovering what truly matters in life: love, hope, and the will to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. It's a reminder that every life, no matter how broken or forgotten, deserves a chance to heal. For Lily, Sable, and Nova, their journey is a testament to the healing power of love. Love doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't always come with immediate rewards. But when shared in its truest form, it has the power to heal, transform, and create new beginnings. Sometimes, the hardest battles lead to the most beautiful victories, not because they are easy, but because they are fought with an open heart and a strong belief in the ability to change. And for anyone who dares to love unconditionally, regardless of the odds, the story never truly ends. It is just waiting for the next chapter to be written. Lily, Sable, and Nova stood together under the sunset, not knowing what tomorrow would bring, but knowing they would face it together. The story is a reminder that, no matter how tough life gets, love and hope can always guide us, and relationships built on love and trust will help us overcome any challenge.